Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Renito, Chief Scientist with the Institute for Digital Transformation. I want to welcome you to Digital Dialogue, where different industry experts discuss digital transformation topics and issues that are of concern to all businesses. Whether you are already a digital enterprise, or on your journey, or still trying to figure out what that all means, we know you'll find something here for you. Remember, as a LinkedIn Live session, this is your opportunity to interact with these experts. Post your comments and questions in chat for a full interactive experience. Welcome to Digital Dialogue.
All right. Thanks, Frank, and welcome everyone to today's episode of Digital Dialogue. Today, we're going to talk about digital gardening and the concepts of growth, grit, and impact as you think about transformation in the business world. So my name is 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝘁. I'm the Senior Vice President at CGI, which is an international IT services company. I've been in technology for over 25 years and look forward to the conversation today. I'd also like to introduce two of my esteemed colleagues. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Alina Walters. Alina is the Chief Information Officer for the City of Lakewood in Colorado. She has 20 plus years of IT business management experience in both public and private sectors. She's a proven leader focused on developing trusting relationships, empowering staff, and really building a culture of respect, collaboration, and success. She's been with the City of Lakewood since 2014 as the IT Business Transformation Manager, and then was appointed to CIO in May of 2021. She's very passionate about people and technology and is committed to exploring and delivering future-ready solutions for the city and the community. Welcome, Alina. Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Alina. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd also like to introduce Scotty Martin. Scotty is the Director of Consulting Services for CGI. Scotty is in operational excellence and an innovation architect and practitioner. He has 23 years of experience in technology. His experience also includes a decade of public service as a City of Denver, Colorado employee. Scotty is the founder and chief architect of Denver's Peak Academy that is part of Mayor Hancock's internationally recognized peak performance framework. Within 10 years, the Peak Academy trained over 9,000 colleagues who implemented $50 million of efficiencies. So in his free time, Scotty enjoys being a husband and father, playing tennis and hockey, and volunteering in his community. So welcome, Scotty. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Alina. Hi, Alina. Hi.
All right, so as we get started today, I just wanted to, we're going to talk, like we said, the topic really today is digital gardening. And so we thought this was very timely. It's now spring, right? It's May, and in Colorado, we're hopeful that the rain is over, although we still probably run a chance of snow even in May. But if we think about digital gardening and really thinking about our spring gardens, we wanted to talk a little bit about comparing how gardening and digital transformation can align. And you might think, you know, these are very different activities, but when you kind of step back, they really both involve nurturing and growth. They really require patience and persistence, and they both have an impact on the environment. So one might be business and one might be in true environment. So gardening requires planting seeds and helping things grow into healthy plants, while in digital transformation, we really look to implement changes and innovations as we help a business or in an organization grow. So our conversation today is going to focus on some of those key components for preparing, identifying areas where we can promote growth and change, and really how to ensure your garden and your organization is poised, ready, and able to implement transformative practices in order to thrive. So with that, I wanted to ask a couple of questions, and we're actually going to start with Alina. So Alina, you've been the CIO at the City of Lakewood for a while. So when you took on that role, what did you really envision it could be? You walked into a situation, but when you really took a step back and said, gosh, what am I going to do? You know, what did that look like for you?
Thank you for thank you for that great intro and for a great question. It's always fun to reflect on how it all began, and I can't believe how quickly time flies. I will say that as with any garden, I've been thinking about the needs of our department and city for quite some time, and I determined that to be successful, my role needed to be that of a trusting and collaborative partner who focused on progress from a holistic perspective versus solely from a technology perspective. And that goes for both within my department as well as with my city peers. Bottom line, I knew that I couldn't build a beautiful, thriving, diversified garden alone. So I decided to think big, start small, build on our bright spots, and in doing so, learn, adapt, and grow. And from a gardening perspective, I'll say that on my first day, as I was interim CIO at the time, I shared 3 seeds that were intended to shape our future. The first one was building meaningful relationships. The second, improving our communications, and the third was transforming into a team of one. And I can go into a little bit more detail about each. So the first seed, building meaningful relationships, was intended to create trust with our city peers and partner with us so that together we could better balance their needs against the overall impacts of reduced budgets and competing organizational priorities. So to start, we set a goal to co-build what we called City Business and Technology Services Roadmap that would address each of our department's needs and which would also couple their business strategies with technology considerations. The second seed addressed, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The second seed addressed improving our communications internally and externally, and in doing so, connecting our work to everyday operations while also helping us connect more with peers in a personal way. You'll notice the trend through all this is people. I'm very passionate about people and think that that is the most important ingredient in building anything that is successful. So alongside people, we can also all agree, I think, that information is power. So with that in mind and the idea of improving communications, we created an IT business communications squad. That was our fun name. And it was with members from each of our teams to ensure that the information we shared outside considered everyone's lenses and reflected business outcomes and benefits in one voice, while in parallel making us more visible and accessible to the city. We wanted to get out of our department and be out there and not be a mystery. And building on the concept of one voice, that third seed focused on transforming from a team of many to a team of one. We had many lessons learned, some perceived as weeds and others as beautiful flowers, and many bright spots, the brightest again being our staff. And the intent with this third seed was to build on our past, and as a team of one, leverage our diverse skill sets to deliver what I always say, force multiplier business solutions. I think my team is sick of hearing me say that. And since then, I will say that those seeds have transformed and grown and taken root into 5 key focus areas for our department, or garden zones, that we continue to cultivate and through which we have already seen many positive outcomes. And I'll be able to share more on that later.
Yeah, we'll circle back on that for sure. But that's a great concept, though, because you knew here's what you needed to plant and here's what you needed to start with before you could even envision, right? What's the end state, or what is this garden really going to look like? Because there's a lot that has to go into maintaining those seeds and getting them in the right place.
They went through many iterations, that's for sure.
It takes a long time. So, you know, Scotty, there's also, you've got a lot of experience, right, with change and transformation, talking about Peak Academy at City and County of Denver. So, how did you even start that? I mean, that's a huge undertaking with a lot of trickle down, right, with digital transformation across the city. So again, how did that start? What did you have to think about when you kicked that off?
What a great question. And first off, thanks again for the invitation to join you today. And Alina, the stories that you tell about the gardening are amazing and wonderful. Thinking about Peak Academy and the transformation with the City and County of Denver government in the lens of gardening, it's you'll hear a few themes as I talk about this, which are really preparing the ground, maybe removing rocks and boulders from the soil, and really implementing some changes to the environment and teaching some language, some tools of gardening that would, through architecting that change, would allow the foundation for a future digital transformation. And a lot of the work that was happening with Peak Academy, if you haven't heard, it's centered around continuous daily improvement of processes. So a lot of lean process improvement. But there was always a goal that ultimately this would support enterprise-wide changes, process throughout the city and county, as well as provide the foundation for the CIO and for all the rock stars inside of the IT department, technology services, so that they could really help with those enterprise transformations. So that was always a goal of what we were looking for. And what's interesting is, I love, Alina, how you talked about like the different seeds that you were specifically planting. What was handed to us from the mayor, Mayor Hancock, when he was elected and with his appointees, were three very clear seeds. And that was to drive transformation that would improve government services to vulnerable populations, improving transportation within the city, and to work to measurably improve public safety. So these were three kind of large seeds that the mayor had set forward and said, if we're going to start with continuous improvement being process improvement, being the foundation for future technology and digital transformation, you let me know at the executive level what rocks need to be removed. And that was a really important piece, that level of executive support. So from the mayor to the COO and the CIO being involved in this in terms of being able to, one of the first things that we did, and this is really just executing the garden, so that the seeds were given to us. But the execution of that, of like really preparing the ground, we went on essentially a roadshow. We went department by department, and we, with the mayor's voice in front of us, those three bullets, it was, what does your department do that impacts this? How do you measure that? And who are the core team members that you know that you want to invest in to help drive the continuous improvement of the process? And ultimately, of course, over years, we're building the transition into this digital transformation, but we're starting with the people and the process first. So through that, a lot of the rocks were kind of removed through building trust in those discussions. And I think it kind of goes into some of the work that you were doing, Alina, is like really get in with the business and to really understand what they're doing. And we based everything based off of values. You'll hear that quite a bit if you hear about the City and County of Denver and Peak Academy. It was, we exist to be of service to the constituents and the people that we serve throughout the city. And this is about improving things for them. So this is the most selfish way to be selfless, or selfless selfishness. But that transformation was, so those values then turned into, we started to teach tools that became language and tools driving continuous improvement, which was really important because with the opportunity to learn some of the tools, and we're talking about team members, whether it's in public works or animal control. These are animal control officers that drive the city streets to pick up loose dogs or help in those communities. Regardless of the city service, we were teaching specific tools of how to look at a process, what's the technology that supports that process, and what are the outcomes that you're looking to improve with that. And any small improvement that was made, we worked heavily with the mayor's office to really start to promote those people that were making change and to really drive more and more of that daily continuous improvement, with the intent that over, whether it was a year, 3 years, 5 years, now we're at 10 years, that some of the smaller things kind of grow and build into large changes throughout the city. So that is a little bit about the way that we took some of the seeds that were given to us and started to prepare the soil with these values, removing some of the rocks, building trust, and then really implementing language and tools of the gardening so that it was up to the team members. And we didn't architect what specific processes. We didn't have that in mind. We just wanted them to start making measurable improvements. So is that helpful?
Oh yeah, but you know, there's so much I know that went into Topeka Academy, and just the results that came out of that were pretty amazing. So just a great story and a great process there. So I know with some of the things in you know, in my past, I think timing is also a piece of transformation. And just like with gardening, you know, you want to plant your flowers early, or you want to get your pots all prepped and everything, and you do that, and then it like snows on Mother's Day. Right. So then all your plants like wilt. So, you know, that might not be the best opportunity. So I know, you know, in the past for me, I actually worked on a big workflow project, and there was a lot of discussion, right? We knew, if you think about the garden, or you think about, you know, one of my guilty pleasures is those lawnmower shows, you know, where the houses are like a disaster and you go in and you watch the guys like clear it all out. So, you know, we were kind of in a situation where we knew that our sidewalk and our grass and our bushes, everything was kind of a mess, but it wasn't the right time. So even though we said, yes, we're going to make these changes and here's what we really want to do, you know, we put together a plan, but the plan sat because there weren't the resources, there weren't the money, there wasn't the time at that point. So what did we have to do? We really had to back up. And so after going like this, right, walking into our house, because we didn't want to see, you know, all that horrible landscaping, finally, 18 months later, you know, then it was like, okay, I think we have some time. I think we can maybe bring in a person to start to, you know, edge the sidewalk, and we can start to really think about cleaning off, you know, all the dirt and really figuring out, what does this really look like for the organization? And so, and to both of your points, we really had to think, here are what the new seeds are. Here's what the obstacles were, and how do we really pull those back? And then we even had to, you know, in my mind, we even had to do like 2 phases of gardening, right? Because we had to dig into, what do we want this process to look like? Here's what it did look like. Here's what we want it to look like. Here's future state, right? So we had to really flush a lot of that work out, which is hard. That's hard work, but to really dig in and identify the business technologies and the processes and what we want that to look like, then we can then go ahead and really implement a solution. And to, you know, Scotty, to your point, really coming to common language, common understanding, making sure that we were present, you know, we were doing our daily weeding and our daily, you know, watering and things like that, to make sure that the processes that we had established really were able to move forward and be much prettier, you know, in the end. So it was really kind of a big project that continues even now. So, you know, and as we talk about that, kind of cultivating transformation, because we know it just doesn't happen, right? Even with the best intent, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't stay sometimes. So, Alina, can you talk just a little bit about kind of your experience cultivating transformation?
Absolutely. And I just want to say there are so many parallels in all of our stories, right? And I think a commonality is the word we. And I think everyone who's listening can agree it takes a we, right? I refer to it as the village. And, you know, what I'm hearing from both of you is, we needed to think about, we needed to try, we needed to then change and adapt. And it's the same concept. We all deal with the same opportunities, right? I don't like to think of them as problems. I like to think of opportunities that we're discovering, right, through lessons learned. So it's always exciting to have these conversations for that reason, because you realize you're not alone, and that's really helpful and powerful. So moving on to this question about cultivating transformation and kind of connecting it to that I would like to first acknowledge that I am grateful beyond words for the trust and the support that was given to me and continues to be given to me by my manager, who is the city manager, by the city's leadership team, the staff, my IT team, And honestly, you know, you, my colleagues and friends and mentors, so that we could build the garden that we have in place. The way that I see it is, no matter the effort, whether it's starting a new garden or evaluating how to modify or enhance an existing garden, or deciding that maybe the garden is ready to be transformed into a greenhouse or something that doesn't even exist yet. It always takes time, and it takes this village, this week, right? So, as I alluded to earlier, with the ongoing support of my village, right? Those first seeds that I had planted on my first day as CIO have transformed into 5 key focus areas. And we're continuing to nurture and grow those no matter what the weather is. And in fact, these focus areas have become the basis of the majority of our internal discussions, and they have helped cultivate many transformational outcomes. So real quick, I'll go through them. You know, I'm a number person sometimes, bullet person. So the first one is to be employee and citizen centric, and to start with their end in mind, right? So by understanding the business needs from that end user perspective, as technologists, we can help identify win-win solutions and meet co-defined business and technical strategic goals. And I think that's really important because you're not walking alone. The second focus area is to build a future-ready labor through the delivery of innovative, pragmatic, and secure solutions, right? That align with city goals, and ultimately that empower teams to deliver more benefits to their end users. The third is to excel at delivering our key technical services. I want us to be amazing, right, at the basics, at what we need to do as an IT department, so that we can free up and allocate time to exploring transformative opportunities, and in turn, bringing that human element in, right? Empower our staff with the skills needed to keep up with the quickly changing landscape around us.
I think that's such a key point too, because I think that when you don't create that baseline, you know, we've seen that some people try and skip that step, right? Yeah. They go in and your garden's a disaster, and they plant one new thing like right in the middle, and then like the next season you're looking at that going, what in the world happened? Why why is that there?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
And then the last 2 focus areas, to be a team of one, which you've already heard about, right? And that to me means to value one another, listen and understand one another, and to build a culture where our diverse skill sets come together and contribute to a greater solution, as well as to greater individual development. Again, that people focus. And last is to be a business value partner. And that's what you are both talking about, right? How do we learn and understand the business, partner with them? And it's from the top down, it's from that executive leadership, all throughout the organization. How do we partner and succeed at delivering the best business services possible through the best technology solutions available? So always couple.
Yeah. So there's a theme. It's interesting. The more that we kind of unpack, and we've been talking quite a bit together about our gardens. What I loved, and kind of like the second point you were making, is this force multiplier, and you know, a version of, first off, gratitude, because it's not you doing the work, and myself, you know, gardening. The whole thing with Peak Academy, that's 11,000 innovators throughout the city and county of Denver. Like that's them blossoming, you know, and the idea that you have this force multiplier, that when you plant a seed and those with your teams, and those solutions are available to other team members at the city of Lakewood, they're the ones that are improving and benefiting end users or citizens using these tools and solutions. And it's not anything that you did as a gardener or me or any of us. It's just like, I'm stunned that, you know, things can kind of blossom, and sometimes they can overtake the garden, in a good way, maybe. I don't know. It's but it's pretty interesting, that force multiplier. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I was just going to say real quick, I think we have to create the opportunity, right? And then that's where all the teams come together, and they're the ones who solution the way to success.
Yeah. You have to create that path, right? Or create that environment for them, for sure. So, and I think we've talked a lot about kind of cultivating, and we're also kind of assuming things will grow, right? And maybe some things either don't grow, or what are the things that grow that we don't like? Those are usually weeds, right? Big weeds. And so, what do we have to do to either make sure that we're taking care of something that didn't grow and replacing it? Or what did we have to do if we found a big weed? Scotty, have you had that happen to you in your career?
So the weeds, yes. And I love the idea of, something won't grow. This even just starting myself to garden in the real world, not just the digital gardening, but sometimes you have to be thoughtful about what can grow in Colorado and its climate versus somewhere else. So that's another thing. Maybe if something's not taking root, maybe take a step back and just say, hey, regardless of what I think I'm doing to cultivate the soil, is this plant indigenous? Does it really grow here? And so that might be something to consider. It depends on what the situation is. But when it comes to the weeds, the things that grow that you don't want to, I remember this was after I was not with Peak Academy, but I was actually working with the CIO at Denver International Airport to build out a business intelligence offering from the CIO's office out as a digital transformation tool to the rest of the business. And this goes back to engaging the business. But the gardening aspect was, there were two, and one in particular, there was one person, and thinking about this person as a weed is really interesting because let me kind of tell the story. It's going to start like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're calling somebody a weed. But it was detrimental kind of hearing, oh, you think you're going to build the business intelligence and it's going to actually have impact in these reports, and we're going to be able to ask questions of the data and be able to drive operational excellence. You have all of these dreams and vision, and you're never going to do it. And this is the types of things that my team was hearing. And it was a team member. It wasn't me who said, you know what we need to do? We need to deliver small. So like small wins of kind of cultivating the stories and the soil. But we're going to get some small wins specifically with that person. And the goal is in the next 6 months, they're going to be the biggest advocate for like the program that we're driving. And lo and behold, yes, what the team was focused, they were the ones that did it. They delivered certain solutions that had that person within a few months saying, if you need to go into another business unit, I'll go in with you and tell them how great you are. Like I'll give them a call. And they ended up being, they were evangelizing business intelligence throughout different departments at the airport. And it was all based off of this idea of, oh my gosh, there's this weed in front of us. Like, and your first instinct is to pull it, but it's an organic thing. And then how do you take something that you didn't think you wanted to grow and turn it into something that is helpful within the garden, which was pretty impactful. That's one of my weed stories, but I think Alina, Alida, you might have stories of your own.
Well, I think it's interesting that sometimes, we talked about this, right? Sometimes the weeds are the prettiest things, even though they might not be, the most helpful, but, they're kind of the shiny object. And I know that, in my past life, when I worked at an organization, a public sector organization, we had big weeds. So, everything was kind of steady state. You're kind of looking at your garden, right? And there's a weed. And so you acknowledge it and you're like, I'll get around to pulling that weed. Well, then you go back like 3 months later and now the weed is huge. It's like 6 feet tall, towering, over your garden. And although that seemed like it was a really big problem for that particular organization, but it really also made us take a step back and find out that literally we had to pull up everything. I mean, so, you start with one weed and then you're just like, pretty soon you've realized that everything that was underneath there really needs to be redone, and you need to, rezone and reestablish what you really want your garden and your processes to be. And in this particular instance, that's really what I did for about 2 years, was kind of rebuild. different sections of this garden. And Scotty, kind of to your point, I had some people in that organization. I had some people that retired, you know, it was a little too much work for them, and that's fine. You know, they didn't want to align with the culture and whatnot. But at the same time, I had one person in particular, and she, just like you, she truly became the advocate for all of the change that we had to affect, and became an advocate for other departments, other agencies, and kind of became my go-to person. And I truly was very appreciative of that. But, you know, it was a little surprising at the time, because that's really not, you know, not what I expected. But she really helped us drive the better story and drive the better vision, you know, by the end. So,
you know, if I can hop on to what you guys are saying, I made some notes.
Yeah.
I think it's a perception that it's a weed, right? And
yeah.
if you take a step back and you revisit, well, what's the climate? And that's what you were talking about, Scotty. And well, how is it that we need to repackage, redeliver, right? And understand the environment. And that's what you did, Alita, right? I think then the weed can become that beautiful flower, as you mentioned and have experienced, and we've all experienced. I think it's hard to transform, right? And that's why sometimes using industry words can be intimidating. It's hard to transform when it's a separate second job. Hey guys, we're going to do some digital transformation. What?
And people run away.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have time for that. So I think with this idea of the garden, the organic growth, right? How can we weave in transformation so it's not transformation, right? Because and that's where I think you create the environment. That's where you create the opportunity so that it does become organic. And I think it's different for every organization based on whatever it is that they're trying to transform. It could be culture. It could be, you know, implementing a new system. It could be getting rid of a system that people really, really love, but you know that it introduces such cyber, you know, risk that you've got to get it out, and you feel for the people. You know it's going to be better, but they don't have time to learn a new system. So I think it's incumbent upon us to sit back and listen and really understand why we're perceiving the weed to be a weed, and then create the environment where the weed is not a weed. It is the beautiful flower that it is. So just some thoughts.
That's a great thought. I mean, it feels like that's the weed story that I was sharing, where, you know, one of our team members said, we're going to turn this into a flower, right? This is right. Yeah. That's a great observation.
Well, and I think too, as those things continue to unfold, right, and they present themselves, you know, you have this vision, and we're all trying to work toward that vision. But then we also realize, you know, that things always come in seasons. So even though, you know, we make our way and we've set the vision for, here's my summer garden for 2023, but then what happens in the fall, right? We have to go back and we have to rework, you know, the vision. So I think as we start to think about, you know, kind of closing out our conversation here, you know, what do you think about the seasons and your vision, and what do we need to make sure we look ahead to? Because we know that there's going to be another change. It's inevitable. Scotty, what do you think about? Or go ahead.
I can hop in.
Yeah.
The incremental, right? You mentioned it, baby steps. I believe that a vision is achieved incrementally and consistently, right? You can't give up. It's an ongoing effort. And as we have all experienced, the landscape is always changing. It's just, that's what it is. And that's a good thing. But with every small step that we do make, it could be a lesson learned. It could be a bright spot. We are that much closer to achieving our vision. The key to me is to stay nimble, to engage the village, and to use information to adapt the path and the journey as needed to ensure that the vision remains relevant. So bringing it back to gardening terms and gardening fears. So this past weekend, I put my gardening fears aside, and I bought 2 ginormous planters for our deck that I needed to actually fill from the bottom up. So I spoke to the lady at the garden center, and I said, how do you design the garden planner? And she said, well, it's got to have depth and height and texture. Okay. So I did a little research. I went out and I bought the plants and the flowers that I think will give it, depth and height and texture. But ultimately, my goal for these planters, my vision, right, is that they would bring me joy when I look at them, and they would bring joy to anybody who passes by. Now, I know that I probably chose many rock flowers. I'll likely need to fertilize the soil and change some plants, and definitely add automatic water lines to improve little mini gardens' chances of survival. That's the journey, right? But none of that changes my vision and my hope that in the end, the planters will bring me joy. And if not this season, then next season, right? So that's that incremental. I'm not going to give up. I'm in this. I'm excited because they actually look really good now that the plants are new. I don't know, a week from now, but we'll revisit that.
You're on your way, right? The master gardener, right? Pulling everything together. So Scotty, any other closing thoughts from you?
It's first off, Alina, every time we get together, like I'm amazed. Like, you're just such a wonderful leader, and I genuinely mean that. But the comment I was going to make is it's actually quite aligned with we had someone pop on with a comment that said this is, transformation, digital transformation is not an event. It's a journey. And so this concept of these growing seasons actually allows, and Alina, I loved how you talked about being nimble. It allows you the opportunity to at least reflect, is this actually growing? How can I improve the yield next season? Or do I need to make, I think it gets overused quite a bit, but the word pivot, do I need to make a pivot with my team that we need to be growing something else in the garden, right? Without completely, we still have the planters. The vision is we still want people when they walk by to get joy, but maybe the thing that's in the planter isn't what we originally thought, right?
And that's not a mistake.
Right.
Totally. It's an opportunity.
Oh, and I love the comment of like the annuals versus the perennials. Absolutely. And the idea that these gardens, whether annually or perennial, that you're always cultivating something, and this concept that it is not a one and done. It's not an event. That was huge. And that was what I wanted to kind of come in with, is to just recognize that gardening and thinking about that metaphor when it comes to transformation and digital transformation is the opportunity to go through growing seasons and pivot, make changes, adjustments, but you got to continue to cultivate and to study and to think about what is the next yield.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, like you've said, it's an ongoing process, and really being open to acknowledging when something didn't work and planting something new, or being okay with the fact that maybe this worked this year, it might not work next year. My dog might dig up and eat all the strawberries that were in my, in my flower bed. So they got a lot of joy out of it. But next year, I know.
One of your 6 dogs, Alina.
Right. Yeah. One of my too many dogs. Yes. But I think just looking at it holistically, we all go through this, and technology is no different, right? So although I think on the surface, you might think, gosh, really, is gardening and digital transformation, are they really that different? But they both require a lot of the same things. And so we really wanted to make the effort to move each one of those forward as much as we can, and focus either on the outside dirt and grit and garden, or with our organizations really focusing on the data and the technology. And to your point, Alina, the people, because that's what's really going to drive a lot of our evolution, no matter what. So I want to thank both of you for taking the time today. Certainly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation, and thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, Scotty. Thanks, Alina. And thanks everyone
Alina.
watching.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining our digital dialogue. Be sure to join our next digital dialogue on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.